Due to the nature of my clan, we Ventrue are not really prone to our blood changing. Due to our loyalty and orthodox culture, we rarely, if ever, go against the grain, let alone split apart enough for our blood to change even slightly, which is why I have yet to speak of a single bloodline of my own clan. But that, of course, has happened before, though they are quite rare in comparison to others. To my knowledge, there are only really two who have split off enough so that I would class them as a bloodline, and neither of which can be found within the Camarilla, or even the Anarchs as full-fledged members anyway. Let me speak of one of the more independents, or should I say their own minor sect, those whose blood has changed and tied themselves deeper to one land and subcontinent, the Danava of India. You see, this bloodline is quite old, exceptionally so, as it happened at a time before the first of emperors and great conquerors, before a time where most places even wrote down their history. They may in fact be one of the first contenders to ever become a bloodline apart from the main clan. But again, we would have no way of ever knowing that. This is perhaps the main reason they have been allowed to be so apart from the mainline clan for so long, since neither of us can remember the moment we split apart, but we do know for a certainty that we do share the same vitae. I'm also sure it's not that surprising that a land defined by a caste system for the vast majority of its history has a clan of kings ruling it. Indeed, they were around for the earliest eras of the subcontinent's history. It is entirely possible they are responsible for its successes outright. Were it not for the Ravnos, the Danava would be the largest powerhouse in the land. But instead, they were around the second. Keep in mind there were a handful of other clans and local bloodlines of the land that fit into their kindred caste system, of which the Danava sat at the top. These bloodlines I will most likely never speak of, and if I did it would be collectively for their differences cease at the cultural level. But the Danava's blood has actually gone through some changes. Still, a remarkable amount of sway was held over the land. As such, they deeply tied themselves to it, in a way that actually changed them in how they operate. See, they view themselves as paragons of the land, and given India's more spiritual leanings, the bloodline have taken on this aspect to their core. It's quite hard to find one of their blood who is not attached to a religion from this land, with the most common one being Hinduism, of course. See, their feeding restriction has even changed, or rather acts in a more specific way. It's more like they all share the same one now, and that one's quite simple. If they wish to feed upon someone, they must first perform a sort of consecration ritual upon their would-be victim, and that lasts a little under a minute, making feeding an entire ceremony to them. This seems minor at first, but this does make them unable to feed in combat, and that can prevent final death. Oh, and like the mainland clan, they would never feed on the likes of an animal. They have access to various blood magics as well that are reflective of their religious ceremonies, but those I will speak about later. For now I think it's best to move on to their history, for it's quite interesting. See, many of them believe that they were created from the want of a god, but not an Abrahamic one, no. From the goddess Danu, hence their nickname, the Children of Danu. But most of them do still think they descend of a bloodline, yet they refer to their clan's antediluvian as Vedafa, I believe, and claim that we, the Ventrue, are in fact the offshoot bloodline, and that they are the main clan. In fairness, they are old enough so that their own lineages is without a reliable origin. But Clan Ventrue is near global, and have been around for longer than most recorded history. They are confined to one place. But on top of that, we do have a credible but not the most reliable source that claims that Danava was indeed the real childer of the antediluvian, not the antediluvian himself, and that makes the most sense to me. There is also the same source that claims that his own childer were not of his bloodline. So do keep that in mind, as it's a little convoluted. As far as my knowledge, no one has ever claimed that they've met their final death, so it's far more likely that they are in torpor somewhere. Regardless of when this happened, he was the most present figure in their history for thousands of years, and formed his own small sect with the Ravnos. I think the correct term for it is Jatty, meaning caste, where the two of them ruled as the top caste and the other local bloodlines below them, serving various jobs in various ways at various positions. But he only left a few hundred years before what we now call the Dark Ages, and he left his throne empty. There were multiple people who could have taken over after him, and he didn't name a proper successor. This is when most of his clan were on their own, which mattered a great deal, as the Ashira began invading those lands during the height of their expansion, and India was in their sights. The conflicts and disputes followed the actual borders of history quite well. If you want a map of what sect was winning, just follow the Kain history, and you would know who was really pulling the strings. In short, the sides pushed back and forth for a while. At some points one had near total control, and at others they swapped. Until a foreign force came in, being the British, led by the main clan Ventrue, and we took the whole thing. The reason the Ventrue took more favourable side with the Jatty, despite the fact they were on the back foot at the time, was for two reasons. One, they were the least hostile of the two factions, and their connection to the Danava being of the same vitae. They were essentially becoming vassals to the Camarilla, given a little bit of independence, as long as they showed some sense of fealty. And they were slowly being brought into the fold and used for their unique assets. However, all of that changed during the Week of Nightmares, the time the antediluvian of the Ravnos woke up within India, drove all of his clan mad, causing mass panic and insanity. This destroyed the local power system and resulted in the whole of the land being turned upside down. The Ravnos of the land have never truly recovered, and the Danava did, or rather are. It has taken them a while to slowly rebuild back their power structure, though they are still not content with their current situation. But that is their current situation. Damaged, but ready and eager to regrow. Now, let me move on to their powers, for they have dominate and fortitude like the normal bloodline, but they are also famed for their blood sorcery, which they refer to as sadhana. While they can do all the same usual rituals you would expect, they also have some unique manifestations that give them various degrees of future foresight, although those are quite limiting ones. And all of these are done with a more Hindu style to their rituals, as I'm sure you could devise from what we have spoken of so far. Of course, they have their own names for these things as well. If a Tremere called something the Path of the Focused Mind, a Danava would call it something like the Echo of Nirvana. But for the most part, they are performing the exact same ritual, with the same end, just a different application. I should move on to the Danava I personally know, who is one of my oldest allies who I can actually trust, for he is, in fact, of their blood, a fellow elder who is only a few generations higher than myself. See, I have quite a fondness for their home, for there was a few hundred years of my life where I was forced to travel the lands, as Mithras had kicked me from my own fucking country that I built with my own... Regardless, I was a wanderer for a long time. One journey began when I was looking for a lost childer of mine. I was searching for Sir Hugh of Kent. He was actually a Norman, and one who signed up for the Crusades to seek power. He was directly connected to the disaster that was the Fourth. My search of him led me into the lands of the Ashira, which led me into India, where I met the kindred who called himself Hashar. He was a Danava, who, believe it or not, just lost his own childer, who was on a rampant quest of her own. He joined me for a moment, and we decided to look together. We got to talking and realized how similar our tales were. I was a king of a lost land who, due to the power of another, and was scrubbed from history. And apparently, he was an emperor with the same cursed fate. Out of all I was travelling with within my company, he was one of the most welcoming. But in the end, we found our two childer together, partying Apparently they had started a relationship and fought to elope instead of informing either of us. And after a very stern talking to, I gave them my blessing to carry on adventuring. After all, it was basically what I was doing at the time. I would have been a massive hypocrite if I said otherwise. The only crime he committed in my eyes was he had a partner and he did not tell me. But due to this experience, Ishar and I remained great allies. It was due to him, in fact, that I knew the Week of Nightmares was going to happen, for he sensed something was amiss, just not what, and I arrived in India to help as best I could, but I have spoken of this before. The Danava are fascinating, for they perfectly embody a form of nobility that is specific to the concepts of one region. But what would kings and nobles be if they failed to embody such things? Truly, I find it good proof that they are fit for purpose as nobility of the night, for just like the Ventrue of clan proper, they see the needs of their people and try to give them what is needed, or at least what they think is needed. That is where the good are siphoned from the bad. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot. But till next we meet, fellow chap, have a good night.